Alrighty. In a previous video, we discussed how a lot of tech companies put emphasis on diversity and inclusion. Um, and so I want to share today, well, first of all, we have identified what doesn't matter as much, which is tech experience. You don't need to be coming from the tech industry to break into tech sales. You don't need to know software or know how to use software or anything like that. You don't need to be a software engineer. Um, but in sales experience is not important either. These are entry level roles where you will learn the craft. And unless you come from the B2B sales world, um, no one expects you to know how to conduct business in this world. It's a little different if you're not used to it. And so everything is learnable. So if sales experience doesn't matter and tech experience doesn't matter, what does? What are you going to be graded on by recruiters and sales managers? What are they really looking for? That's what we're going to cover today. Before that, I want to discuss at a high level what sales really is, because if I can describe what it is, then you'll understand why it is an attainable skill that anybody can cultivate and acquire. The first thing that you need to understand is sales is a learnable skill. Anyone can acquire it. You don't need to be born with extroversion. You don't need the gift of the gab. Personally, when I was growing up, I was very shy and introverted. Yet today, I have a successful career. I've helped close millions of dollars, and I've learned a lot. So you can cultivate it. At a fundamental level, sales is really about solving a business problem. So in this world, if you're looking to solve a bit, essentially in the sales world, as a profession, you're essentially just looking for businesses who have pain, who have challenges, who have problems. And to solve their problems, what you do is you ask them questions so you can get clarity on exactly what they're struggling with. And once you've identified what they're struggling with, then you can prescribe a solution. Usually that's your software, assuming that their problem is actually a good fit for what you can help with. And then in the end, a deal is made, a sale happens. But really, through all this process, really the sale happened because there was someone in need to begin with. So you were helping them by providing them a solution. And at a high level, that's really all sales is. It's not as sleazy as they make it seem in the movies, nor as aggressive. Um, and so what does matter, right? What is it? Here are the top traits that, let's see how many there are there. There's 5. So here are the top 5 traits, personality traits that if you have these and you have examples of these in your personal and professional life, you are going to be you're going to do extremely well in your interviewing process. You're going to delight pretty much any tech company that you interview with. So as I go through these and describe these, make sure to start noting down and thinking about stories and reference experience that you've had in your professional world and personal, or in college if you're a recent college grad or soon to be a college grad. Think about those things because you're going to be asked in your interview. Hands down, you will be asked in your interview. So it's better um, to prepare by knowing these now. So trait number 1, and probably the most important, is being coachable. That is really what they're going to be looking for. So have examples of when you've been coached in the past and how you've received feedback. There's going to be many times where you lose opportunities or screw up in this world. That is okay. What ends up happening though when you mess up? Are you open to receiving feedback? If you're someone that loves to grow as an individual, you love to be challenged, you love personal development, this is going to be a great field for you. This is it can be a stressful profession, but if you're coachable, what ends up happening is that you can actually mitigate a lot of the stress that happens, and you can grow and become better. And by becoming better, you outgrow the stress or anxiety that you might be experiencing early on in this career. Um, One of the questions that you'll likely even get in your interview to test how coachable you are is, hey, if if I was to ask your manager, your previous manager about you, what would they say? And really what the recruiter or the sales manager wants to see is, are you self-aware? Are you open? And are you honest about things that you struggle with? Really, what they're looking for is someone who can identify their own gaps. And what they're not looking for is someone who gets nervous. If you get nervous when someone asks you about your flaws or your weaknesses, you're not going to pass this test. That means you're not coachable. Coachable people are open to hearing feedback, even if it hurts. So just keep that in mind. And as I mentioned before, in preparation for future interviews, start to think about times when you've received feedback or coaching in a professional setting. You must be able to explain how coaching also helped you perform better as a result. So have a couple stories up your sleeve. The other important thing is a positive attitude and resilience. Why is that important? Objections and rejection are going to be a regular occurrence in this world. Um, and like I mentioned before, you will lose deals, clients will cancel last minute on you, etc. All of this can be disappointing. And so you must be able to regulate yourself and regulate your emotions and successfully deal with the punches. Um, that's not to say that you'll experience that all the time, but it is common in sales. So you must know how to manage that. So have a growth mindset, glass half full kind of mindset. That's really what they're looking for. Um, and in the interviewing process, it's the recruiters and sales managers can tell when you are struggling. So what they're really going to look for is they're going to throw some hard questions your way. That's part of the test. That's part of the interviewing process. They do this to see how you react. When they throw a tough question your way, do you get frustrated? Do you become negative? Or do you maintain positivity? That's really what they're going to be looking for because, again, positivity and resilience is going to be one of the things that they look for. Um, and yeah, like I mentioned before, they'll ask you questions just to see how you can handle it. And they'll inquire about challenging times that you've had before. When you had challenging times, what did you do about it? How did you handle rejection in the past? How did you help yourself or your team get better? Because there are teammates that when they experience tough times, they get selfish, they look out for themselves, or they self-destruct. So they really want to see that through challenging times and chaos, you can step up to the plate and even help others succeed. This is probably one of my favorites and really what I've seen over and over again in interviews and overall what people look for in salespeople, which is self determination and self leadership. Does this person try to figure out things on their own? When you get stuck on a problem, do you go and try to find outside answers on your own? Do you go ask around? In other words, do you go do whatever you need to get the job done? Or are you someone that, like I mentioned before, breaks down under pressure? As an example, many tech companies don't always have the proper onboarding programs or the proper training programs for their new employees. I've experienced this many times. That's part of the game that happens. Um, However, in those situations, what I have done is I take matters into my own hands. I ask around until I find the answer. I read through the documents that we have, I read through emails, and I try to get answers on my own. I don't get upset, I don't get frustrated. It's part of the job sometimes, and I get what I need to get the job done. So This is something that they're going to be looking for. They're also going to be asking you about, hey, outside of work, what do you do? What do you like to do? They really want to figure out if you're someone that takes learning into their own hands and is curious and doesn't just, shut off and be unproductive after work. They really want someone that, works hard and then after work maybe does 30 minutes of reading or takes 30 minutes of a course online so that they can come back to the job effective, more effective. So be able to present certain things that you do outside of work that that show that you are driven. The other thing that they look for, and this is going to be more applicable to college candidates, fresh college grads or soon to be grads. Um, but like I mentioned before, self determination, self leadership, aka, are you a proactive person? A great example of this is folks who were in college who volunteer to be team captain or were the president of a club or vice president of a club, you know, things that show that you take initiative. That's what they're going to be looking for. So make sure that you have a couple stories under your belt ready to go, written down somewhere that can demonstrate times when you have taken initiative, shown self leadership, shown self determination, because that's what's really going to make you successful in tech sales. Other thing they look for, team player. I mean, this is obvious. Come in, be a team player, be collaborative. The reason why they want this is because this is remote work. A lot of tech companies offer remote work. You never have to come into the office, work from home, no commute. You get the point. And so this makes it so that, essentially with remote work, that means no one's watching over your back. No one is telling you, is checking in on you, seeing what you're doing and what you're not doing. No one can come in and see, are you dressed professionally or are you working from your laptop in your pajamas in bed? No one cares. What they do care about, though, is everything that I mentioned before: being effective, being coachable, self determination, etc. And it means having integrity and being easy to work with. Because if you're easy to work with and coachable, that means we can trust you. And in a remote environment, trust and integrity are everything. So make sure that you're a team player. And again, have examples of this. Have examples of times when you've had to collaborate with others to get the job done. Lastly, but importantly here, is being a concise speaker, meaning you don't ramble. This is especially crucial in sales. Can you present an idea in a concise manner without complicating it? How clearly can you communicate? Can you take a complex idea and explain it in a simple way? I've personally interviewed many candidates and I am shocked at how poor their presentation is. It's like they don't rehearse or they don't practice or they don't write it down. And then when they come to me in the interview process nervously, they end up just talking and talking and talking. I ask them a hard question and they can't seem to get it out or explain it in a clear manner. So make sure that you practice this. This is why in the Breaking Into Tech Sales program, I mentioned that you should take about 20 practice interviews or apply to 20 companies and get a couple practice interviews under your belt, because those practice interviews will quickly uncover the weaknesses in your game. And I guarantee that many of you watching this haven't interviewed in a long time and haven't interviewed it for a tech company before, and you're going to be a little rusty. You're not going to communicate clearly. You're going to overcomplicate things. You're going to make things more complicated than they need to be. So take a couple practice interviews, refine your approach, refine your pitch, refine your interview answers. And then by the time you get to your dream jobs, your dream companies, your top companies, you're coming in as a well-oiled, refined machine that just delivers perfectly. So be concise and don't ramble. I do want to talk about who tech sales is not for. Um, so, anyone with a serious social phobia or social anxiety, probably not the best career option for you. I'm talking about real social phobia here, real social anxiety. I'm not talking about, oh, I'm shy, or like, oh, sometimes I'm introverted, or like, sometimes I prefer to stay in. Nah, I'm talking about like you were afraid of talking to people. You got one friend in your whole life, two friends your whole life. You struggle. Maybe not for you, but if you're reading this or listening to this, it's likely not you. If you don't know how to use a computer, smartphone, or email, you don't need to know the ins and outs of technology and how it all works, but you should be able to use technology and understand technology with ease. That's it. Computer literacy is also a must. Again, do you understand how to leverage the internet? Uh, you know, I've got older parents and they don't even know how to search stuff on Google. So you have to be literate. You have to be literate with the computer. I'm sure that's obvious, but I gotta say it just in case. What don't you need though? What don't you need? You don't need a certification of any sort. I see a lot of people who are really proactive and ambitious, and they're getting their certifications in things like Salesforce, data science, programming, etc. And you don't need any of that. You don't need to be a software engineer or you don't need to know how to code to break into tech sales. If you want to get this stuff, fine, go ahead. But like I've mentioned in previous videos, they tend to be costly, they tend to be expensive, and the return on investments, in my opinion, is low. Because if you get a Salesforce certification, most sales managers really don't care. It's not what moves the needle. What will move the needle are being able to absolutely display with these traits above, showing you're coachable, showing you're a team player, being concise, having a positive attitude, having stories to back this all up. That's what's most important. So you don't need any certifications. You don't need to take a sales boot camp either. I know that there are a lot of sales boot camps out there. They are well. I have a friend that paid $12,000 for a sales boot camp, and what was the return on investment? Well, if you compare him to me, I never took a sales boot camp. I just applied. I tried hard. I refined my approach during the interview process. I spent $0 on a sales boot camp. He spent 12,000. To this day, he's still paying it off. And we are equals. We are in the same role. So we make the same amount of money. And so the return on investment for him was lower. It is low. In other words, if you spend $12,000 on a sales boot camp or whatever it's going to cost, you may as well you should be making a lot more. You should be making good money. Um, Unfortunately, I found that most people that take these sales boot camps, um, the payoff isn't there. So I recommend that you skip that. This course and the breaking into tech sales program will help. Lastly, you don't need to know how to sell. You will learn a lot on the job. Remember, this is an entry level sales role. They are going to arm you, and I'm also going to have book recommendations soon on my website, so you can start to do homework and study. Um, but you don't need to learn sales, especially B2B sales in the tech industry. It's complex. It takes a while to learn and figure out. But if you have the traits that I mentioned earlier, the traits that they're really going to be vetting you for, such as coachable and positive attitude, then you will learn the ropes. You will learn what you need to learn. Trust me. So that's all that matters here. Focus on what really matters, which is displaying these top 5 personality traits. Come up with 2 or 3 stories good stories for each one, trust me, you will be ready. You will impress the recruiters and the sales managers.